And we're live, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Welcome to another SGGQA podcast hosted by none other than I, SGG, that's some gadget guy. And the Q&A stands for the questions and answers and conversations that we get into on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/Juan Bagnell. Because I get some amazing discussion going on and some really fun back and forth, lots of disagreements, lots of really cool arguments, and then also a ton of people who agree with me because I'm totes awesome, legit, for reals. But this episode, we're really going to take a quick look at well, first of all, we've got to talk about Blackberry because we're going to be sharing my thoughts on the Blackberry Priv. My initial first reactions, I didn't do any kind of unboxing video or any nonsense like that, but I do have a camera review, speaker test, stuff like that. Those videos are already live. Camera review actually went live this morning. It's already getting some interesting feedback from people that are really into smartphone cameras. And then we're going to talk a little bit about holidays, your holiday prep, what you do to get ready for the holidays. And then I'm probably going to lead off with a quick conversation about Netiquette. You know, your etiquette online. I've been getting some really aggressive or sort of spiky comments from some people, and it's cool that people might disagree with me, and I'm even fine to a degree of people calling me names, but there's a sort of thing that there's this like threshold that gets crossed when people start leaving really crappy comments, and I'm not always going to be able to police that kind of stuff, but I work really hard at kind of fostering a slightly more open style of discussion on my videos. So we're going to talk about that too. When we jump in, we've got to start off with holidays. Today is Friday the 20th, and today is Africa Industrialization Day. So if you're industrialized in Africa, this is the day for you. Today is a beautiful day, and here in Southern California, it is actually kind of a beautiful day, but it is a little concerning just that we're on the beginnings of another warming trend. That's it's kind of freaky that it's November. It's almost the end of November, and we're probably going to have another stretch of 80-degree weather out here. Global warming. I also have a little bit of a dry sore throat going on, so hopefully I don't keep coughing like that. Today is Future Teachers of America Day, and if you're considering going into the profession of education, I salute you. Today is Globally Organized Hug a Runner Day. As opposed to one of those crappy locally organized Hug a Runner days, today is the day that we globally recognize runners, and you should give them a hug. Today is International Stand Up to Bullying Day. That I'm not going to make a joke about because we should absolutely have open discourse about how we can stem the abuse of people's from bullying, not through bullying. We don't want to stem abuse by bullying. We want to stem abuse by preventing bullying. Today is Name Your PC Day. Well, that's a perfect day. So to celebrate Name Your PC Day, my PC is Hera. She's a super powerful workstation that I use for video editing, and I actually have a video on this channel where I show you how I put Hera together and what components I used to put Hera together. Today is National Absurdity Day. I'm a big fan of absurd comedy. I guess to celebrate Absurdity Day, I would recommend people watch the IT Crowd because I think that's a wonderfully, deliciously absurd show. Today is National Peanut Butter Fudge Day. And man, so I have a hard time with combinations of foods like peanut butter and chocolate. So it's super delicious, teeny little like Reese's, obviously, those are great. I actually really like the dark chocolate Trader Joe's peanut butter cups. Those things are phenomenal, but I can only have like one or two before I feel like I'm super dehydrated. So I've never understood, like chocolate peanut butter milkshakes or chocolate peanut butter ice creams, because I'm drinking a milkshake, and by the time I'm done drinking that milkshake, I am deathly thirsty. Like I feel like all of the moisture has been sucked out of my body by eating this delicious confection. Today is Transgender Day of Remembrance. I'm sorry, that took me a couple extra tries to get out. Transgender Day of Remembrance. I actually don't know what that's about, so I would recommend looking it up if that's something that might affect your life or your lifestyle. And today is Universal Children's Day. So if you know a child from the universe, today is the day to celebrate that child. Not limited or local Children's Day. It's Universal Children's Day. So jumping into actual content of this show, let's chat out the Blackberry Priv. So the camera review for the Blackberry Priv went up this morning. It's the most in-depth camera review you will find online. It's been frustrating sort of watching the hardware discussion unfold on phones like the Priv, because we have this notion. Okay, so to backtrack a little bit, there's been a lot of geek commentary and geek discussion over things like what makes a phone popular, right? So when companies are sort of building out smartphones, when we were going through that phase of first wave consumer smartphone solutions, the iPhone had come out. We were getting the first looks at Android. Windows was sort of becoming irrelevant. BlackBerry was struggling, and Palm was trying to switch over into WebOS. That first wave, we had this explosion of different operating systems and different usage models. Within a couple of years, everyone started piling on to basically the iOS or the Android bandwagon. So those two became the two most popular offerings in the smartphone ecosystem. Microsoft was way late with Windows Phone. BlackBerry really didn't have an answer for good touchscreen computing. There was a lot of shakeup in that market. But then after that point, basically everyone wanted companies to just jump on those two bandwagons because that's what they were already using. So like when Nokia started looking at what they were going to do to move beyond Symbian, they should just do an Android phone. They should just do Android. Now, every single company that has some other solution that's not Android or iOS, there's this huge commentary out there that people should just use Android. Because if it's not an iPhone, you should just use Android. And it's basically, for me, it becomes an argument of laziness. Like, I don't think that just because you make an Android phone that it'll be popular, right? Just because Android's the number one operating system in the world doesn't mean that if you make an Android phone, it's going to sell well. And so I look at phones like, maybe Android wouldn't have been a good fit for Nokia. In fact, I think WebOS would have been an amazing place to take Nokia because it would have been this funky operating system with this funky hardware design. It could have been a really interesting combination, but instead HP burned all of those dreams down to the ground. So now we look at BlackBerry. So I was a fan of the BlackBerry Classic. I liked the Passport, but I hated the camera on the Passport. But there was a problem where BlackBerry and Windows Phone are facing what we call the app gap. It's trying to convince developers to actually produce software for your platform. BlackBerry tried to get around it by building in emulated support for Android apps. And they ran well enough. They didn't run great. Especially considering the really nice hardware that the Passport had. They just ran okay. So it really wasn't a great solution to get more developers to make software for your platform. Because why would I make a BlackBerry specific app for, was it less than 1% of the smartphone market when your phone supports Android apps anyway? So now we're finally caught up. We're now moving to the Priv, and BlackBerry they've sort of just walked away from they haven't walked away. They're still going to be supporting other BlackBerry OS phones, but the Priv represents their first step towards building out an Android device. So that was a lot of talking to get to my first impressions on the Priv. First of all, the hardware is sick. I love the slider keyboard. I can't tell you how much I've missed hardware keyboards on premier smartphones. Hardware keyboards became one of those things that we would just sort of slap onto some texting phone. And I miss the glory days of HTC landscape sliders and taking this all the way back. This reminds me of the HTC Blue Angel from Windows Mobile way back in the day. You have this little portrait style keyboard that pops up out from under the phone. The overall phone design feels very familiar. It feels to me kind of like a mixture of classic Sony and maybe something like the Motorola Razr, with the way that the backplate has a nice grippy texture that feels kind of Kevlar-y. It's a really nice overall look. And then the way that the screen sort of curves on the sides, I don't think is as aggressive as what happens with Samsung with the Edge. So this phone is a little bit easier to hold on to for me, especially because the backplate isn't glass. It's a grippier material. It holds in my hand a bit better. And that makes it really easy to flick the screen up when you want to get to the keyboard. All in all, this is great hardware. It's a really nice effort from BlackBerry to address some of the issues in the Android market where all phones are becoming kind of the same boring, glowing rectangle. BlackBerry is trying to do something different to differentiate themselves in the marketplace, and that's something that we want to celebrate. Now, that still doesn't mean that I think they've got a hit on their hands, and we'll have to wait for my full review. But they still have an issue in the market of consumer confidence. And I probably won't spend a lot of time talking about this in the review, but what I mean by that is over the last 4 years, we've seen BlackBerry now flirt with 3 different operating systems: the classic BlackBerry operating system, the BlackBerry OS 10, and now they're playing with Android. And when you have that much going on, it's difficult for consumers to get a handle on what it is that you're trying to accomplish, and it makes it hard for consumers to trust that you're not going to change something else in the future. And this is why I always hold to the notion of a 3-year life cycle for a company trying to break into any market. It takes at least 3 years of consistent production, upgrades, support, and then putting out new models. It takes at least 3 years for a consumer to take any company seriously. I think a perfect example is Microsoft Surface. Microsoft has never built their own hardware. The first Surface gets panned by everybody. Surface 2, some more people jump on board the Surface train. By the time we get to the Surface Pro 3, it's becoming a viable option for people to consider shopping in the marketplace. So Android on BlackBerry, for me, if Android consumers are really going to take it seriously and consider jumping ship from Samsungs or LGs or HTCs, BlackBerry needs to show that they're going to have the consistency, the support, the follow through, and the updated models over a period of time for consumers to trust that they're going to be doing business with a company that's going to be sticking around. And that's something that I worry about with BlackBerry. I don't know that they've got the fortitude to stick it out. I worry that companies like BlackBerry and HTC are looking at, do we have a hit? No. Well, then let's do something else. And that becomes a big concern because it's not even about the phone. It's about the company's culture. What kind of corporate culture that company has and what type of long-term plans they have for succeeding in this market. And I kind of feel, we're facing a lot of those issues. BlackBerry OS 10 didn't really latch on to consumers, but we never saw from them the concerted efforts in putting out advertising, putting out branding, making sure that they had boots on the ground to be showing these phones, putting these phones in people's hands. And, some kind of the same thing is happening. I just got a comment from RGB Plaza, and he's saying it's about time the Lumia units went out. And I don't know if I'll be getting a Lumia 950 review unit. I think it's very telling that Microsoft is skipping reviewers, which I actually approve of this plan. For too long, I think Microsoft's PR strategy has been, let's try and go top down. We want to get our gadgets in the biggest blogs possible. And that always means that they want the hits and they want the social media metrics. So they dump gadgets on things like The Verge. So they got all these hits, but then they sent their gadget to a site that's very obviously biased against their style of gadget. If you go through and you read, the Surface Book and the Surface Pro 4 reviews on The Verge, they get decently high scores. Like they get 8s, but that's not a good review. It's like The Verge kind of has a logarithmic, sliding scale on how they review gadgets. So like 1 to 7 is terrible, 8 is okay, and then 9 and 10 is reserved for Apple. Like that's kind of the scoop that The Verge uses. And then whenever you read through the actual substance of the review, the actual article that they publish, it's like, well, here's something that's really good about the Surface, but then I had all these problems with all these other things, and I don't use my gadgets like this because the MacBook doesn't need a touch screen, so I don't understand why anyone would need one on the Surface Book. So it's not a positive review. So they got all of these millions of impressions from someone dismissing positive things about the gadget and then hyper focusing on all the things they don't like about the gadget. So for me, The Verge represents the pinnacle of, let's not review the gadget. Let's review what the gadget isn't. And if the gadget is not an Apple product, then it's not good. So you can follow that sort of logic on almost everything that they produce. So getting back to the Lumia 950, I'm actually really positive on the fact that Microsoft is going straight to consumers. The phone is just going to be sold. If you buy the phone, you can review the phone on your own social media channel. But I still don't think that that's enough to get consumers interested in the product. And this is something where I think Microsoft really could have learned something from LG. For the G4, for the V10, they reached out to a number of smaller content producers. Like LG reached out to me for the V10 to produce videos on, my experiences using the V10. They wanted to know my thoughts on the camera. They wanted to know my thoughts on the audio. They wanted to know my thoughts on the phone as a whole. And I think that's going to really help LG build up sort of a community of people that are willing to take a look at their products beyond just, oh, well, it's another Android manufacturer, but you should probably buy Samsung instead because Samsung's the biggest. That really helps generate a different quality of discussion. And I think that's something that Microsoft needs to do. And I think it's something that BlackBerry has been needing to do for a really long time, where if people aren't exposed to your gadget, they don't even know that it's there to buy. And I guarantee you that outside of the people who watch my videos, if you're watching this video right now, you're probably smarter than the average bear when it comes to technology. Like, I'm going to take the Priv with me for, to go visit family and friends for Thanksgiving, right? I guarantee you that I will get some of those nostalgic glances like, oh, yeah, I used to have a BlackBerry back in the day. Oh, I remember BBM. And they're not going to really latch on to BlackBerry as a current smartphone solution. They're going to focus and fixate on BlackBerry as something that was in the past. And it's going to be this weird anachronistic thing that I'm holding a BlackBerry phone today. And it's not even going to register that it's like Android. I bet I know one cousin who's going to be like, oh, wait, is that the Android version? And I think the rest of my family's going to go, yeah, but I like my iPhone. Like it's a train I almost said it's a train that's sailed. It's a ship that's sailed. So those are my initial thoughts on BlackBerry, on the Priv. And I know that's not exactly, sort of phone substance. I'm still getting used to it. There's so much custom software. I'm really trying to spend, my review is actually going to end up becoming more of a longer term review, like a 2-week review. Just because I want to make sure that I'm actually utilizing what it is that BlackBerry's doing and not just falling for the trap of, well, now that it's Android, I can just do all of my Android things on it. You know what I mean? Like, there's so many Android solutions that I'm just comfortable with now. I want to make sure I'm actually reviewing the phone, not just the hardware. But anyway, the camera review is live now, and it is actually a much better camera than I was expecting it to be. BlackBerry has a reputation for mediocre to terrible cameras on their phones. I was very disappointed in the Passport. And so this is a much improved camera interface. Definitely check it out. It's a full 4K video. I've got tons of samples in every shooting style that you would want to see: bright outdoor light, shaded light, low light situations. We talk about the different camera features. We talk about bokeh, depth of field. We look at still photos, HDR photos, panorama, you name it. If there's anything you want to know about the camera on the back of the Priv, we cover it. It's the most in-depth review you can see. So speaking of camera stuff, I almost forgot to do this. So last week, my call to action was send me photos. I want to be featuring your photography. I want to feature your content. I'm so into smartphone photography and sort of empowering that discussion, because I think these cameras are they're not just good enough to use in a pinch. They are actual content creation tools. And so this photo was sent to me on Instagram. If I can get into screen share, and for people listening to the audio version of this is going to be a minute or two of kind of boring content. So this photo came to me courtesy of Mike L. Beard on Instagram. And Mike L. Beard writes, trying to be artistic at work, hashtag artwork, hashtag random, hashtag galaxy, hashtag note 5, hashtag Samsung, hashtag SGGQA. And so, Mike, thanks for sending this my way, man. This is a really lovely fall scene that he's trying to shoot some really blurry depth of fieldy stuff with the leaves right in front of his camera body and the background starting to wash out, because the Note 5 actually really does have a nice depth of field blur as you approach more macro distances. And I thought this was a nice representation of a fall scene. This isn't something that we get to see a lot of here in Southern California. If the leaves do change, it's on one tree that's not native to this area. So I was really appreciative of someone sending me a fall scene. Let me get out of screen share now. So that was Mike L. Beard. That's the photo of the week from Mike L. Beard. And I'm going to go ahead and lay out the call to action for this week. We're going to be going quiet next week. So for Thanksgiving, I'm not going to have another podcast out there. So your 2-week challenge, I don't know why I've got 4 fingers up. Your 2-week challenge is I want to see pictures of food. I want to see pictures of holiday food, festive food. Even if you don't celebrate Thanksgiving, I want to see a fancy meal at a nice restaurant, or something that you really took time to craft with your own hands. And so not next week, but the week following, the week after Thanksgiving, that's when I want to see some really awesome food shots, because Thanksgiving is my favorite holiday of the year. It's the holiday with the least amount of expectation. It's not commercialized like some other holidays that I know of. And for our family, it represents this great moment where we come together, we eat tons of food, we laugh, we talk, we catch up, and we spend time prepping. Like Thanksgiving in my household is actually a week-long affair in prepping the food in actually the Thanksgiving day. And then what we do with the leftovers, we build time into our year so that we can spend time with each other and we can kind of participate with that whole experience. So your call to action for, if you want a photo featured on this podcast, definitely send me some of your holiday food photos, because that's what I want to see from you guys. So now let's get into some comments. Let's get into some discussion. So from last week's show, I got this comment from this question from Kyle Ruggles. Kyle's actually been participating a lot. Kyle's a professional photographer up in Canada, and he shoots some really cool stuff. So I'd recommend giving him a follow, checking him out not only on YouTube, but he's got some pretty cool shots on Instagram. And Kyle writes, I've got a question for this podcast. I noticed the stream is at 720p at 60 frames per second. Is there a reason why? I notice a lot of people are doing 720p 60 frames per second, which I understand for gaming or reviewing the fluidity of interfaces, but for blogs and vlogs, why? I mean, for some people who would want 720p, but the extra bandwidth that comes with 60 frames per second, I don't know. It's just something that was on my mind. You're always on my mind. So, Kyle, I'm glad you asked about the video stream here, because I had no idea that YouTube had actually switched me over to 720p 60 frames per second. When I first set up Hangouts and live streaming, I just sort of selected a highest quality option, and I've just stuck with that. So I had no idea that it had actually switched over, because I don't believe that my podcast actually does stream at 60 frames per second. I don't think that's real. Maybe they're sort of interpolating it or something like that. I doubt my webcam is able to send that high quality stream. It's just one of those janky old Microsoft, Cinema HD cams. So if it is 60p, awesome. I think that's probably fake though. So thank you for asking, and I had no idea. So I appreciate you bringing that to my attention. So moving on, from last week's show, I also got this question from RGB Plaza, who writes, you may have had this question before, but do you think that the Zeiss lenses in the Lumias actually make a difference, or is it just marketing? I'm quite amateur, and I like to learn about how these things work. So RGB Plaza, thank you for that question, because it's actually a pretty great one, considering what we're starting to the changes we're starting to see for smartphones, where we're really starting to respect them as content creation devices. And so a lot of this is marketing. We want words that we understand and companies that we identify with as being quality. But just like with audio, when Dolby slaps a certification on something, that has to mean something. If Dolby slaps their certification on a device which obviously underperforms when it comes to audio, that's bad for the Dolby brand. So while it is marketing, these companies are paying money to make sure that those words, Dolby, Zeiss, what is it on the Priv? It's Schneider? Yeah, so the Priv has a Schneider lens. That's good glass. So to get that certification and to get that branding, that sort of synergistic relationship between the manufacturer and the company that produces this higher quality content creation tool, like a good lens or higher quality premium audio, Beats certification back when HTC was using that for boom sound, you still do need to make something nice. So when we look at the optics on a Lumia, like I've got my 1020 here, and this is a Zeiss lens. Zeiss does have to say, hey, this piece of glass that we're grinding down and everything does have to perform up to our standards, at least, before they ship it off to Nokia, or now to the Lumia team. And same thing, Samsung makes their own lenses. So Samsung, I don't think people always realize, like the different sort of fingers and thumbs that these companies have in the various pies that they do business with. That was a terrible analogy. So with Samsung makes their own cameras. Like I've got a Samsung NX30. The NX1 is pretty sweet. They've got their own line of lenses, so they are responsible for manufacturing sensors and glass. Samsung makes their own camera equipment. They don't license out to Sony to make their camera sensors for their mirrorless cameras. So Samsung makes their own lenses for their phones, or at least I think they do. I'm pretty sure they do. I know the image sensors can switch back and forth between ISOCELL and Sony. Someone drop me a comment on that. I might be totally wrong, but I was under the impression that Samsung was building out their own lenses. But you take a look at a company like LG, and I don't know where LG sources their camera lens from. It could be from a really high quality company, but there is no branding on the back end of an LG phone. And there are some, so the look of the photography off of an LG phone versus the look of the photography off of something like the Lumia 1020, I would say that the optics on the 1020 are superior. Subtly so, because we're talking about tiny little lenses and super small little image sensors. But I do think that there is an edge for Lumia there. It's just whether or not the photographer is really trying to exploit that, and whether or not it's worth whatever price premium difference you might see when a company's trying to build out a smartphone. So I would say that even if you're really into smartphone cameras, even if the main reason why you want to own a smartphone is to have the best possible mobile camera experience you can, I don't know that the branding on a lens would be one of the top things that I would consider as a purchasing decision. So just because the V10 doesn't have Zeiss branding on the lens doesn't mean I'm going to dismiss it. So I would say you want to look at the entire camera package. And then if it does have some cool branding like Schneider, Zeiss, or whatever other manufacturer makes glasses, like if we had a Leica lens on the back of a phone, that would be cool. But I would also say, like, does it have the features you need? Does it have the settings you want? Does it have manual modes? Does it have, the bitrate controls that you might be looking for? Is it going to actually allow you to get your work done, or does it just have a cool lens? So that's how I would kind of look at branding and positioning and stuff like that. So Kyle Ruggles, RGB Plaza, thank you so much for those comments, for those questions. Just real quick, we've got a couple messages here in the live chat from Damir Frank because it's Name Your PC Day. His PC is going to be called Snowflake because it's all white, and he's planning a build on an i7 6700K. Oh, he's looking at another. That's an extreme edition, so he's looking at another monster workstation like I did. So my workstation Hera will have a PAL in Snowflake. And RGB Plaza is in the live chat too. And so RGB Plaza has a PC, and his PC is called Amplitude because he's a physics geek. Right on, dude. I wholeheartedly approve of that PC name. And Ryan Schneider asks, are Schneider lenses truly good? Well, Schneider, your lenses should be pretty good, man. I don't know. They're named after you, so I would assume that they're. No, I'm kidding. So it's the Schneider has a decent reputation for building out glass. So I would say slapping that branding on the back of a phone body at least speaks to an attention to detail and an attention to building out a premium product. So I actually haven't shot a lot on Schneider lenses, so I don't know exactly what that company represents. Like I've spent most of my time on cinema glass, so I don't know firsthand, but I know by reputation that they seem to have a decent reputation, a pretty good reputation. Someone drop me a comment. Maybe Schneider lenses are crap. I don't know. So speaking of of dropping comments, we should get to etiquette. We should get to Netiquette. Netiquette, your etiquette online. And I had a couple different experiences here this week. With people dropping me sort of aggressive or crappy comments. So the first one actually resulted in me blocking someone from the YouTube channel, which I haven't done a lot of. To date, I think I've blocked 7 people. And really, for me, blocking doesn't become a situation. I don't take blocking lightly, but it's either someone is doing something just absolutely reprehensible, someone is trying to chill discussion from other people, like they're harassing other people, or someone is refusing to acknowledge that they're just radically wasting my time. I tried to respond to every comment that's asked of me. I get hundreds of comments a day. Sometimes I've broken 1,000 comments a day a couple times on this channel, even considering that my channel isn't the biggest channel on the block. Now, obviously, when I have 1,000 comment day, I am not replying to 1,000 comments. but I work very hard. It's a part-time job all by itself, just responding to every comment that I feel is appropriate for me to weigh in on the discussion or is asking me specifically about something. And I do my best. I can't get to everything, but I do try to get to as much as I can. So when I produced, oh, it's not in here. Dang it. When I produced my review on the Galaxy S6 Active, uh, that was back in July when I finally got the review released. So I got the review unit, I think, a couple weeks after the phone had actually come out. And so then it took me about 2 weeks to actually produce the review, because every phone I get, I try to do this breakup where I do a separate camera test, I do a speaker test, I do a vlog off of the front-facing camera, and then I use the phone that whole time, over the course of a week or so I can actually get a feel for it, and then I produce the full review. So the script on that is usually written a couple days before the video gets produced. I have to shoot a ton of photography on, for the Active, I actually did take it outside and shot some video clips so that you could see a rugged phone outdoors, not just in my office, because I think that's janky. It's like, oh, it's this rugged phone. Now here's my office. And also just because I get bored and I get a little stir crazy spending all day, every day in this box. So, I think, what do I think it came out at the beginning of July. So all of a sudden I see comments just blowing up on this video. This video was out in July. And it's for a one-off phone. It's an AT&T exclusive. It's one of my favorite phones of the year, but you can't get it on Verizon, can't get it on T-Mobile, can't get it on Sprint. So the traffic on that video is typically less than a more mass market phone. So when I see comments blowing up, I think there's probably a problem. When I see a lot of comments suddenly launch on a video that's months old for a phone that's not super popular. So I go and I check it out, and there's a guy there that's responding. It's not that he's aggressive, but he's blunt. He's dropping comments on all of these people that were concerned about the storage options for the Active. Because when I got the phone, the only storage option was 32 gig. And I think that's a little lean for a flagship phone when you're really touting a high-end camera and you're going to load it with all of your favorite apps, and it kind of chills how you might use that device. You're constantly having to manage the storage on a 32 gig phone if you're really into things like content creation, or you like to play games, or you just want to have a ton of music on your phone. 32 gigs is lean. So he's going through and correcting everybody on the fact that there is also a 64 gig option. These are all comments that were left in at the beginning of July. And so I shoot him a message and say, hey, when this phone, so he shoots me a comment first. So he's replying to all these other people, and then he shoots me a direct comment where it's, do your research. There's a 64 gig option. And that's it. It's just this blunt, do your research. The last time you walked up to someone in person and then you didn't preface your comment, you didn't say like, oh, hey, I noticed that you got this wrong. You just go up to someone, do your research, period. Done. So I reply and I say, like, oh, hey, when these phones came out, there wasn't a 60. I mean, look at when this video was produced and look at when these people left comments. And so then he drops another comment. Well, I see when the video was produced and the 64 gig option came out 2 days before this video was produced. So if you're going to be in the know, you need to do your research. All right. So now we have a problem because, we work very hard at making sure information is accurate. So I go through and I rewatch the video too, because I think, well, maybe I did something dumb. And maybe I said, oh, and I think it's very upsetting that there's only a 32 gig option. I did no such thing. I actually did build into the review the idea that there could be a 64 gig option. I just didn't talk about it at all because all we had access to was the 32 when I started reviewing that phone. But I didn't say, oh, and I'm very upset that there's only a 32 gig option. I just didn't mention that I hadn't checked out the 64. And I didn't review the 64 gig phone. I only reviewed the 32 gig phone. So yeah, I can see there's an omission there, but it wasn't that I was factually wrong. So I reply again, and we get into a back and forth, which goes another couple comments. And at the same time, he's still like sort of replying to other people's comments on the video. So my notifications are kind of still blowing up on this guy chatting through other things. And so I drop him one last comment saying, I appreciate that, but you're being really rude. And if you want to have a conversation, you want to correct me, that's fine. And I can add, I can add information to a video, or I can also revisit the active, which I am planning on doing at the end of the year. And he's still kind of throwing back shade about how if I'm supposed to be this gadget guy who's in the know, or people are supposed to trust my recommendations, how I need to get this stuff right. And so we kind of leave it. And then I write one last comment about, oh, and yeah, and the next time you meet someone face to face, make sure you drop a do your research really bluntly. And then, oh, and this is what bothered me. So it was when I replied, he started backpedaling on, oh, well, I don't understand why you're taking this so seriously. I'm just trying to help you out. And that was the thing that really pissed me off, because that's one thing that I just can't stand in society in general, is when someone comes at you super aggressive, and then when you respond in kind, whoa, I don't see why you're getting so upset, bro. I don't see what the problem is. I was just trying to help you out. And so he did that to me. And that set me off. So I drop him one last comment, just like, on the next time you're face to face with someone, drop a really blunt, do your research, and then backpedal and say, oh, I don't see what the problem is. I'm not so serious about everything, and see how many friends that gets you. And his last reply to that was like, oh, well, I'm too old to care about making new friends at this point in my life. Like, okay, well, now I know I'm dealing with someone who's got some kind of issue. If this guy because, and I want to be careful how I phrase this, and I don't mean to belittle people with actual developmental issues or with actual social issues, but when I start seeing language like that, where he came in aggressive, he doesn't seem to have any concept for how he's relating to other people. He's sort of fixated on this one aspect of one review and correcting information. Like it's his mission to make sure that people understand that they're being wronged by watching my video review of the Galaxy S6 Active because I omitted this one fact. And then he's dropping comments like, oh, well, I don't need to make new friends at this stage in my life. I'm dealing with someone who probably has emotional issues, and he's going to keep leaving comments on my channel. He's going to keep sucking time out of my day. So it became sort of a self-preservation situation where I had to walk away. I had to gnaw my own arm off to get out of that bear trap. So I blocked him. And it's frustrating because I like being able to turn people. I like being able to take something that was really crappy and see if I can make it work. And, case in point, getting away from crappy dude, I got another comment almost like within hours of me blocking this sort of emotionally disturbed guy, out of sorry, I just saw in the live chat, Master of 901. I can't see what your name is. He's like, that voice was amazing. That's my Broham voice. I hate that voice because I encounter it a lot in Southern California. I don't see what the problem is, man. Come on, I'm just being cool. Come on, bro. So it's it was in like an hour of blocking the crappy dude who was emotionally disturbed. I got a comment from a gentleman by the name of Kelsey's Lampkins. And this was on, I did a video a long time ago about smartphone camera depth of field and how it compared to point and shoot cameras, and then how it compared to DSLRs. It was kind of to show, it was a precursor to some of the videos I've shot recently where I'm tired of people saying that your phone can replace your DSLR, which I disagree with, but we still want to respect the fact that smartphones are fantastic content creation tools. And so this was, again, this is another old video. This video was comparing like the Galaxy S4 and the HTC One M7. That's how old this video was. And I get a comment on it from Kelsey's who wrote, dummy, you didn't use aftermarket lenses, which would have put the smartphones on equal ground. So I'm already pissed off because I just had that crazy interaction with the emotionally disturbed gentleman. And so I'm trying really hard not to just like tooth and claw into Mr. Lampkins. But I write Mr. Lampkins a reply where I start off by saying, first of all, starting a comment with dummy is very disrespectful. That's rude. You're better than that. Don't be that guy. So then the rest of the comment is, if we really want to have a conversation about optics, we can. I'm perfectly happy to have that conversation about optics. If you're really here just to insult me, I don't have any problems blocking you from this channel. And he like within minutes writes me another reply where then we just get into a debate. Like an actual good-natured, good-hearted, he disagrees with me completely, but he's bringing up facts. He's looking at lenses. He's looking at optics. And we have this wonderful conversation after that point. So, I'm sharing videos with him. He's replying to those videos and telling me why he disagrees with the premise of those videos. And that's a benefit. But throughout the rest of those conversations, he doesn't insult me anymore. And we were able to have that conversation because he's not calling me a dummy, or he's not telling me to do my research or educate myself or anything like that. We're just focused on the facts. I'm fine if you want to disagree with me and you have data. if you've got the the information, if you've got the evidence to support your argument, we'll be friends. We'll be tooth and claw. We'll be slinging, comments back and forth. We'll be heated. We'll be angry. I'll be sweating at my keyboard. Someone on the internet is wrong. But we'll be friends doing all of that. I'm cool. I am cool with you if you want to do that. But once we crest over into taking attacks personally, or you're just in the comments to troll or to insult people or to try and prevent other people from sharing their point of view, then I've got to hit the giant nope, I'm out of there button. And so we also had something a little similar that I wanted to address, and I feel it's important to kind of revisit this topic on a somewhat regular basis. Man, this podcast has been heavy, guys. I'm gonna take a sip of coffee. This is getting all serious and shit. I have to do something like silly, like maybe I'll start doing like I never learned how to do like armpit songs, like you like make a little farting sounds to make a song. I'm gonna practice that, so the next time my podcast gets really sort of droll, I'll just break it up in the middle, like a burp, 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 burp. So I did a comparison video. This has actually been a really popular video for me, where I compared the LG V10 against the Galaxy S6 Edge Plus, and it spurs a lot of conversation. And this is one from Brandon Harmon that I wanted to comment on. And Brandon wrote very simply, so pretty much Samsung loses this fight. It feels biased, but I respect your opinion. And again, with the week that I've been having, it was very difficult for me to not be overly spiky in responding to Brandon. I take this part of my job in reviewing tech very seriously, where I trust my audience enough to look up the objective stuff. I don't feel it's my job to read the specs off the side of the box for you. If you're already competent enough to use a web browser to find YouTube, to see my videos on YouTube, I trust you know how to use the Googles to look up all of the stuff that's truly objective. And what I mean by that is facts like, the spec sheet. If we're going to do a phone comparison, a truly objective phone comparison, that would mean I would take two phones and I would give each phone equal time, and I would never express an opinion about one phone over the other, and we would just detail the differences between these two phones. There are a lot of videos like that on YouTube. In fact, there are a ton of people who like to do things, and that's fine. I think it's a fine commentary. It's not how I like to do videos, but it's where they'll actually just put all of that information on text and play music in the background, and people enjoy watching those videos. Instead of going to a website, I can go to one of those videos and I could read the spec sheet for each phone and see how each phone compares while I listen to lovely, pleasant music. That's fine. That's great. That's not what I want to do. So my job becomes one where I'm more of an editorialist, and I try to be honest about my bias, because I have very clear bias. I try to be very upfront with, I like this, I don't like that. And I would say, maybe I've been at least somewhat consistent about things like since the iPhone 4, not a fan of glass on the back of a phone. I don't think it's a great build material to make a phone out of. That's my personal bias. So moving forward into phones, like moving from the Note 4 to the Note 5 and the Galaxy S6 Edge, I'm disappointed because Samsung took something that I really liked in the Note 4, because I love this build, and then they walked away from it. So that leaves me in the lurch, So I want to talk about those types of experiences. So then when LG builds a phone with metal sides and a textured grippy back, that makes me happy. So that's my bias at play. That is not to say you shouldn't buy a glass phone. That's, as a human being who has things that he likes and things that he doesn't, this is one of those situations where I can clearly demonstrate why it is that I like one over the other. So everyone, if you're participating in a review, you are examining bias. That reviewer has a point of view and is expressing that point of view, and they have their opinion. That's what makes a review entertaining. That's what makes this content more enjoyable to watch, more enjoyable to consume. And so where we have a problem is when that bias is not clearly addressed. When someone tries to claim objectivity, obviously the best possible camera is the iPhone camera. Well, that's not a true statement, right? That's a problem. So it's that's an example of someone's individual bias where they're trying to take their bias and make an assertion that they are speaking objectively or they have some kind of truth behind their statement. And so that's where we have a problem, or where someone's bias has obviously been sort of co-opted by some other outside interest. And we've seen, especially say like in video game journalism, where companies are giving games good reviews, and then we find that there was some sort of behind the scenes payment scheme. That's where we have a very real problem with sort of tech and entertainment journalism, is how those things can be co-opted to try and give a company an edge. And if that were happening to me, I think my channel would be very much more better funded. But with the subscriber base that I've got, I think they'd call me on it really effing quick. So Brandon, not to pick on your comment, but it feels biased, but I respect your opinion. Thanks. First of all, thank you for respecting my opinion. But secondly, look at every single review you've ever watched. If there's any opinion expressed at all, whether or not you agree with that opinion, that is an example of bias. That is an example of someone navigating the discussion towards something that represents their opinion. And I feel as long as we all acknowledge that, that's where we're all going to be better grown-ups moving into the future. And so, case directly relating to this, I just got in the live chat from Stephen Ayers. Thank you. I can use the Googles because Stephen Ayers is a big boy. Stephen Ayers knows how to use the Googles. He doesn't need you to do Googles for him. He says, I can go to nearly anyone for devices specs. I go to people like you for personal opinions. And then he also does a sad emoticon for opinion stated as fact. Wah, wah. So also on that video, and this was a comment that kind of broke my heart a little bit. I'm so sorry that this podcast is being kind of a bummer. We'll see if I can put a happier spin on this, I guess. This comment comes from Sarah Becker on the V10 comparison, who writes, I ordered a Galaxy S6, but not the Edge. I went in wanting an LG, but the new one they had was not charged and I could not play with it. And I'm coming from an iPhone 5. I want a phone with a kick-ass camera, and I really wanted a micro SD card. And after seeing this comparison, I wish I went to another store and at least got to see the LG V10. I've always had LG phones up until I got my iPhone. I loved them, and I love my LG TV. Now, this video has me thinking I made the wrong choice. I should have gone with the LG V10. Does the V10 shoot in RAW or DNG files? And so, like the Galaxy S6 and the LG V10 both capture photos in RAW, but this is the kind of thing that sort of breaks my heart about technology. Is we key ourselves up for the agony of this purchase. This purchase is going to define a huge chunk of my life, my lifestyle, my brand, my fashion, my style. And it really does kind of upset me when someone has worked really hard at trying to come up with a purchasing decision only to get the phone and then feel like they've made a mistake. And so I jokingly say, like, hey, when you buy a new phone, shut off phone reviews. Stop going to gadget blogs. Stop watching my channel for at least a month so that you can just sort of enjoy the fact that you've got a new phone. Every day something new is going to come out. Every day there's a new processor announcement or a new camera announcement or a new phone release. Every day the next best, greatest thing is going to drop. And so you don't have any time to sit and enjoy what it is that you've actually picked up. Now, what's upsetting about things like Sarah's situation here is there was an opportunity for education there that the company she did business with missed. That the store that she went to play with the device wasn't charged. It wasn't available for her to try out. And so she ended up purchasing something based on a lack of information, on a limited scope of what offerings she had. And that's going to make her feel like she missed out on something. moving forward, her relationship with the business, with the carrier that she did business with, is going to be sort of defined by the fact that she wasn't able to complete her education before spending a lot of money on something. So that's where, I mean, like, when going back to other comments, like my personal bias and my, like, why I try to talk about gadgets the way I do is not whether or not you should buy something. I will fight tooth and nail to never say worth it or not worth it, or should you buy it, or any of these other things. I'll put those questions in the titles of videos because they're excellent clickbait, but the actual commentary won't be, I don't think you should buy this phone. For me, there are two major things that come down for every gadget that I review. Is, does this product live up to the manufacturer claims, which most don't? But how far are they off the mark from what was advertised? And two, who is this gadget for? Most gadgets are not for me. My usage for technology is very specific in how I produce content, how I consume content, what kind of entertainment I enjoy. That's very localized to this one little bubble of some gadget guy. That's not applicable to anyone else. My wife gets to play with a lot of this stuff too. Her requirements for a good piece of technology completely different than mine. So it's not my job to tell you whether or not you should buy something. It's my job to be a resource for you to ask questions, for you to get some experience, one point of view that you can then take to other point of views and compare and contrast. That's where I fit into this whole discussion, and that I produce the best camera reviews for phones on the market. No one does a camera review better than me, and I can't even be modest about it because most tech bloggers' camera reviews are crap and mine aren't. So, Sarah, I have to apologize for the tech community at large, because this was an opportunity where we let you down. We didn't have the resources, or we didn't have the content available to you to make the purchasing decision that you needed to make. And this is something that I hope you will maybe consider even addressing with the carrier you did business with. Maybe write them a letter and say, hey, you know what? This was an experience I had. This is something that I'm a little disappointed in. I've got a great phone, but it maybe wasn't the right phone for me. And this is something that I hope you'll address for future opportunities where you'll interact with customers. We can't change the situation if we're not appropriately vocal about it. Whenever a company lets you down like that, it's kind of important to let them know. It's kind of important to show them, hey, this was an opportunity that we all missed. The relationship between carrier and customer fell apart right here. And this is a way that moving forward, we can fix it. And I guarantee you that you'll get some kind of, and obviously you don't go in there and it's like, I want my money back and this is crap. No. You don't go on a tirade. You don't go on a, I almost said something a little politically dicey there. You don't go, like kicking and screaming and red-faced and spitting. But when you appropriately share your experiences, there are a number of people who work in PR, who work in customer relations, who work in retention, who will be interested in knowing that. And it maybe won't affect you personally, but moving forward, it makes this landscape better for everybody. And then for those of us in the gadget community, this is why I keep talking about our knowledge as some kind of superpower, because we can make this stuff so much better for everybody. I can make you feel amazing about a gadget purchase, or I can make you feel crappy about a gadget purchase. It doesn't matter the gadget. It really doesn't. Any phone you pick up, I can either make you feel like you are the smartest, coolest, savviest shopper ever, or I can make you feel like you're the dumbest troglodyte who's just discovered fire and the wheel. It doesn't matter. That's the insane amount of information that I have stuck in my brain on all of this stuff. So that's kind of why I wanted to bring up Sarah's comment here, is because for all of us, we can all be doing a better job about that. And I hope that her experiences will help serve companies so that consumers will be happier with the things that they do purchase. If we really took the time to point a customer into the actual usages that they're detailing, I don't think we'd see this dichotomy between Apple and Samsung. I think we'd see a slightly more spread out market. Like maybe the right fit for someone isn't a flagship phone. Maybe it's just something like an Idol 3 or a Moto G or an Asus. Maybe someone, giving grandma a really cheap phone wasn't a good idea because, oh, we wanted to save money on grandma's phone, but now it's laggy and stuttery and she can't figure out how to use it because it's constantly crashing on her. Maybe we did need to give grandma at least an upper mid-range phone, you know, like those types of things. If we're doing a better job, if we're doing our job as geeks, we can make that situation better for everybody. So moving on, I'm gonna so a really quick question. This is something that I'm gonna be addressing in a longer video later. Oh, I've got some chat. Let's do this real quick. So Ryan Schneider, who asked about Schneider lenses, says, your LG G3 videos were essential in helping my wife and me decide to purchase the G3 right on. I'm glad I was able to help in that discussion. The way in which you record the same stuff, palm tree, traffic, white rose at night, that freaky ass tunnel with multiple devices shows their true strengths and weaknesses. And that's actually something that I work really hard on, is consistency. One of the reasons why I have a problem with the way that gadget bloggers do camera reviews is that they're very inconsistent. So you can take a, I was gonna start like naming names. Maybe I should probably not do that. But when you look at a lot of tech blogger camera reviews, it's like, well, here's this one shot that I took of a picture at the beach. You're like, that's awesome. And you can take a picture at the beach with one phone and a picture at the beach with another phone. But then when they move to another phone, it's not like they went back to the same beach at the same time to recreate those pictures so that you could see moving forward. And so I walk, you know, it takes me 3 days to produce a camera review because I go to the same neighborhoods, I go to the same hills, I go to the same parks, I go to the same creepy ass tunnel and wacky gate, because I want specific things so that when you watch the video on the Priv, you're going to see a lot of the same locations and styles of shots that you see from my camera review on the V10. If you watch the V10 camera review next to the Priv review, you'll see how these two phones handle very similar shooting conditions. That's a lot of video watching, but that's why I do that the way I do. So RGB Plaza, when it comes to real world tests, Phone Buff do some pretty cool stuff when it comes to processing performance. I would agree with that. I think Phone Buff does a pretty good job of sort of doing the benchmarking stuff, because it's another thing too. I don't do a lot of benchmarking. I find it's very difficult for me to come up with consistent and reliable tests to showcase real world performance. Stephen Ayers, you're not bragging about your camera or sound reviews. That is just truth. I appreciate that. And he says, and Stephen Ayers also writes, the Moto G is for grandparent. I would say, if you want a very simplified device, Motorola still, I mean, their mid-rangers and entry-level phones are phenomenal. So that is a phone I would feel more comfortable giving to a grandparent, because I trust Motorola has built up a reputation that it'll be a sleek, simplified device that will work fluidly and consistently. And that's great. Stephen Ayers also writes, do people at your places, the gate, the tunnel, ever ask why you are there all the time? I'm just lurking there with smartphone cameras like every other day. Oh, I'm shooting outside this creepy gate. And it's worse when I do like the actual head-to-head comparison videos, because then I have to shoot all of those video clips opposite the two phones. So I'm sitting there for 30 seconds holding my phone steady on a flower, sitting there for 30 seconds holding a different phone. So it's like 3 minutes of me standing in this one spot as people are walking around and looking at me like I'm some kind of jackass. No one's ever really confronted me on that. The only time I've ever been stopped was I was walking around with the Samsung NX1. And someone walked up to me as I was lying on my stomach, trying to shoot video of these tiny, I think they were lavender flowers. And someone came up to me and asked what camera that was. And it turned out he was a documentary cinematographer. And that's only something that could happen in LA. And so we had a conversation about the NX1. That's the only time anyone's ever asked me, though. You're like, hey, what are you doing? Was to ask about the specific camera body. So getting back to some questions and comments, this one comes from Flaming Yoshi 52. And it was on my Kingston Cloud 2 review. And the Kingston Cloud 2 is a gamer headset. It's got a little microphone on it. And when I did that review, I really wanted to try and show that those gaming headset mics are getting pretty good. And so I worked very hard at creating a high quality sound off of that headset. But Flaming Yoshi writes, can you give me some tips on mic positioning so we can get clear, good voice through them like you did? I just got mine, but I can't make them sound as good. And so when it comes to a headset mic, you really want to look at angle of attack and distance from the mouth. I actually am going to be producing a video on podcast audio and interview audio and just the different tools. I have a mic shootout where you can see a bunch of different mics at play, but then I want to also sort of start focusing a bit more specifically on different styles of technique. But for headset mics, it's we kind of just swing it out in front of our face and assume it's going to sound fine. You do want to still spend some time moving it around. Those little teeny differences on a mic capsule that small can have a very profound change on the tone and quality of the audio that you're producing. So when you kind of pull it out, or you kind of angle it up, or you kind of pull it down, those are the things that are going to have a huge impact on the type of the audio that you record. For me personally, I like to pull up and angle down, because then pea puffs of air should clear the mic. You might get some nose inhaling sound, but for most of the time on my face, when I angle the mic lower and point it up at my face, not only do I get pea puffs of air from my mouth, then I also get whatever air is exhaled out of my nose hitting the diaphragm of the mic, and you get sort of that sound, which is very unpleasant. So that's sort of my general trick. That's where I start. And then after that, it's about how far away can you swing the mic from your face so that you get a little bit more sense of what's going on around you, but the mic is still focused on you. And then that's only going to come down to the quality of what you've plugged the headset into. So if you've got a really good headphone jack on a tablet or your laptop, and you plug that headset into that jack, and you get a really clear signal, then you can turn up the volume on that. A lot of those headphone jacks, though, are usually pretty crappy, and that's why the Kingston comes with its own USB DAC. But the USB DAC with the Kingston is kind of mediocre. It's not great. So Flaming Yoshi, I hope that gives you a few ideas to start with, and then I'm going to be producing another video that I can actually, expound upon that. So we got two more comments here. This is from Austin Schmotzer, who writes, I'm applying to colleges and just recently wrote an app essay on a problem I wanted to solve. And it was about how I wanted to improve consumer relations with mobile devices. Influenced by your ideas, and while I've always been into tech, your channel is one of the biggest driving forces in helping me to refine my interest into a skill. Thanks a ton, and keep being awesome. And so, Austin, I can't tell you how much comments like that mean to me. I am only producing the content I am today because people looked at my stuff and supported me and encouraged me and gave me, and especially, and gave me critical feedback. And so it's everything I can do moving forward to kind of pay some of that forward, So when people have helped me out, to try and help other people out, and then also to try and focus a conversation that isn't just good or bad, pro or con, give it a grade, slap a label on it. I really want to get into nuance. I really want to get into experience. I really want to get into what motivates people. And so I am so happy that one of my videos or my channel could help expand on a conversation for you that would influence you moving forward. I've had so many amazing experiences moving from technology into entertainment and then into consumer electronics and consumer advocacy that I would hope, and I'm happy to hear that for you, I've been able to help contribute to that discussion. And now, just so that I don't have too big of a head, the very next comment I got after Austin sent me that was from NHS 2008 NC, who writes, "Wow, you really have a dwarf thumb." So it was like the highs of sort of inspiring another generation of technologists and futurists and people who could, work on our future problems and produce content. And then instantly right after that, someone was like, "Hey, you got a stumpy thumb." And so NHS 2008, I actually do. My right thumb is my stumpy thumb. Well, I'm going to make sure this is on camera because I like showing this off. When I was in the 5th grade, I played a game of dodgeball where I was pretty quick. So I was usually one of the kids that would kind of run for the balls in the middle of the court first. And so I dove for a ball just as someone else from the opposing team slid in feet first. And so this hand in sort of this shape jammed right up into someone else's sneaker. It popped. I felt something pop in my thumb and I felt something shift. And I went to the nurse and I kind of I could still move it. It was stiff and it was a little swollen, but they're like, "It's fine. You're going to be fine." And I don't even think I told my parents. It was just it just hurt. And then I kind of got over it. And it wasn't until like a week or so later when the puffiness in my palm finally kind of died down that I realized that it had actually jammed in pretty significantly. And so when comparing my two thumbs and I'm really lining my hands up, what is that? It's almost an inch difference between my left thumb and my right thumb. And of course, I'm right hand dominant. So it makes this thumb very ineffective at thumb war. It's pretty terrible. It jammed so bad that it actually pushed veins around, and there's a lump in the top of my hand, which is the easiest place for you to check my pulse now. It's crazy. Like there isn't anything like that on my left hand, but there's this bump on my right hand where you put two fingers right there and you can very clearly feel my pulse. And whenever I go to like a doctor's office, and like they'll start, like, oh, okay, I wanted to listen to your heartbeat. And then when they're checking my pulse, I flip my hand over and I put their hands there. I can watch doctors' eyes like, oh, that shouldn't happen. So, NHS 2008 NC, which I assume stands for National Healthcare, National Health Services 2008 North Carolina. Thank you for pointing out that I've got a stumpy thumb, because I'm super not self-conscious about it. And I'm glad that other people can be amused by my Hobbit-like features. So, folks, I think we should wrap up. I think we should wrap up this podcast. I did not intend for this podcast to be as serious or as sort of maudlin at times as it was, but it's kind of the breaks. I want to reiterate this call to action. This week's call to action is I want to see food photos. I want to see some really cool as you're celebrating, as you're getting into the holidays. You've got 2 weeks. And I will feature the best photos of food that I get over the next 2 weeks. If you want me to feature those photos, you've got to use the hashtag SGGQA. Hashtag SGGQA. You can tag me on Instagram or on Twitter, and I'll start collecting all of those photos, and we'll do a little shootout on fantastic food photography. It was very alliterative of me. When I get back, there will be no show next week because I'm going to be shoving as much food into my face as I possibly can, as I possibly can contain. And that's also, we should also really quick before we leave off, I want to thank the sponsors who have been supporting this channel. First of all, you can always support this channel by hitting the fan funding or by shopping via the Amazon affiliate links that are below these videos as you're doing your holiday shopping. If you do any of it on Amazon, if you click on one of those links before going to Amazon, you can shop for anything. It doesn't have to be tech stuff. But I will greatly appreciate that gesture, because I know it takes time out of your day to hunt down my channel, click on one of those links, but it helps us keep the lights on here at Some Gadget Guy. And then also, if you're looking for that really cool geek or gamer gift, you can maybe check out something like a Loot Crate. The Loot Crate is that subscription box service where they surprise you every month with really cool collectibles. And so you can click on that. And if you use the promo code SGLOOT, SGLOOT at checkout, you can save yourself an additional 10% off of what's already a very cost-effective service. And then audibletrial.com/SGG, you can grab a free audiobook on me. Just go do it. Just go get a free audiobook. You don't even have to do business with Audible. It's just my gift to you this holiday season is a free 30-day trial at Audible and a free audiobook, which even if you decide to cancel your subscription after that point, you can still keep the audiobook. I have to send a shout out to archive.org. Archive.org, their mission is to archive the internet. And we've talked a lot about this in the past on things like memory cards and hard drives. When something like that dies digitally, that content just evaporates. And so Archive is trying to create a backup for the internet. They archive old websites. You can see articles that maybe vanished, or when a blog dies, they try and keep resources on, popular content so that it doesn't just evaporate. And they also have an amazing collection of public domain movies and public domain concerts. They've got like an entire section on Grateful Dead, which is insane, just from people recording Grateful Dead concerts. It's unreal. And so I have stopped sort of supporting other outlets. Like, I don't donate to Wikipedia anymore. I don't really like how they manage their community. I've been giving all of my internet donations lately to archive.org, and Archive is the backbone for the audio version of this podcast. And I wouldn't be able to host that podcast if it weren't for Archive. So I would highly recommend checking them out. And I would highly recommend, if you're going to be contributing to any web service this holiday season, make it Archive, because they're a fantastic resource. And you can subscribe through Stitcher. You can subscribe to the audio podcast through Player FM, through iTunes. We'll be listed on Google Play whenever Google Play launches their podcasts. I don't know if they have already yet. And then, of course, just through RSS with all the links down below this video. So, folks, as always, thanks so much for watching. Be sure to subscribe for more rambling, podcasty vlogs like these. And I wouldn't be able to continue producing on this channel if you guys weren't sharing my videos with your family and friends, other tech-minded people, bringing more cool people to the party, because the whole reason this podcast exists is to celebrate the amazing conversations that we get into talking about tech, nuance, and how we can make this stuff better for everybody. And it especially as we get into the holiday season, as we start getting tech gifts, as we start, sharing our tech experiences from the products that we're going to be giving and receiving, it really speaks to me, because I know I'm going to have some amazing conversations coming up over the next couple of weeks, and I can't thank you enough. So thank you so much for dropping all the comments. Thank you so much for joining me in the live chat. You guys were awesome. I got some great stuff out of you guys, and it really helps me not feel like I'm just, yelling in my office at my webcam for an hour and a half. So you guys are amazing. Thank you so much. And, I think I'm just going to sign this off now. I will catch you all in 2 weeks and on the next podcast. Cheers.